Lauren, hi, and welcome to the Business Growth Mindset Top Achievers podcast. I'm incredibly excited to have you here with me today, but more importantly, I'm really excited that you've taken the time to be on the show because I think our audience is going to learn a lot from the Green Hornet. I can't believe I just ripped that out. You should have actually worn the Lift Choir top.
I should have, but I chose this instead.
Right. Maybe in the end of the podcast, I'll explain to everyone the joke. Caveat, Lauren and I have become good friends. Lauren and I have known each other now for at least four and a half years, maybe 5 years. 5 years. And we've been working together for 2 to 3 years. I have the privilege of serving as the chair to Lauren's business's board, advisory board, and I'm also the chief advisor. So really important that I just disclose that because once the banter begins, everyone will work that out. Lauren, before we dive into today's podcast, and I know that you were a big fan of my solo cast beforehand, I think I wanted to just quickly explain the purpose of why we've put this together was to demonstrate the synergies between top achievers. And I truly believe that you are one of the exceptional top achievers, not only because you are one of my clients, but you're a wonderful human being. You're an incredibly busy person, mother to 3 children, wife to Jules, who is an amazing human being in his own right. And you are one of the most persistent people that I've ever met, and that is why you are here today. Before, though, we dive into the podcast, I want you, in your words, rather than me, because I could sit here and talk you up all day long, in your words, tell our listeners a little bit about you, and then a little bit about Lift. But before we get into Lift, I'd like you to tell us a little bit about your business journey, because I think it tells a really beautiful story of how you got to where you are today.
Okay. Well, like you said, I'm a mother of 3 children. So I've got Ned, who's 12, Ivy's 10, and Stella's 8. So 3 very busy children at home, and that's being a mother is a role that I really enjoy. And like you said, I'm busy and I try and give it as much attention as I can, but there's another side of me, which is being a business owner and being someone who can't really work for anyone else. So that's been... Unemployable is the term I do use. Yeah. And that's something I think I knew that from an early age. So both of my parents have their own businesses. They both work for themselves. And sort of from as long as I can remember, they've worked for themselves. So I've grown up in an environment where, anything's possible. And I think it's been around me my whole life. So after I left school, I went to university, and first of all, I actually started an engineering degree, primarily because when I left school, I didn't know what I wanted to do, and all the career counsellors looked at me as a female who had done, biology and physics and chemistry and maths, and they said, "Oh my gosh, you have to do engineering because we need more females in engineering," and I ticked all the boxes. So I said, "Okay, we'll give that a go," and I think I knew fairly much straight away that wasn't something that I wanted to do, but I stuck with it for the first semester, and after that decided to leave engineering and looked for something. I still wanted to study, but I wanted to do something which was very, very different from engineering because it absolutely was not for me. So physiotherapy cropped up, and so I applied for that and was able to use my school marks still to get into that the following year. So I had 6 months where I didn't do anything other than work at the part-time supermarket down the road, which is where I met Jules.
Yeah, I was going to say.
So that was useful.
Jules coming in. That worked out great. He's an engineer. He's actually got a doctorate in engineering.
And he is, but we didn't meet. Our paths didn't cross. He was a few years older than me. Anyway, so the following year I started physio. Loved it. Very much about people and connection, and felt very purposeful. You were receiving the education which you knew had a real job at the end of it, and you could see what that job looked like, and that appealed to me a lot. So so I did my physio degree for 4 years, and what happened next? Then I got a job at the Royal Adelaide Hospital, got into their graduate program, which I was incredibly excited about, and started learning, about all these other different areas of physio through that first year at the Royal Adelaide. And at the same time, Jules went and got a job over in Canberra. So, I made that decision that I would follow him at that point. So I stayed at the Royal Adelaide for a year, went to Canberra, started doing some private practice over there. But it was when I moved to Canberra that I started thinking about, what would my career look like long term and the longevity of being a physiotherapist. And while it was something I really enjoyed, particularly going into the private practice area where you're seeing 30 patients a day, it's physically exhausting. And I was in my early 20s, so, very fit, no children to worry about, I was getting good sleep, all of those sorts of things. But I'd still, at the end of a week, on a Friday, be absolutely physically, tired. And I absolutely needed that weekend to recover. So that was great at the time, but I started thinking, I'm not sure if this is going to be something I can keep doing forever. And in physio, particularly in private practice, you need to see the patients to earn the money. So, I started thinking about that. And in the back of my head, and this is something actually that I thought about from a very young age, I always had this dream of owning a business that sold shoes for ladies with really big feet, because I've got size 13 feet. And as a 12-year-old with size 13 feet, could never get shoes. So I had to go to the men's department. I had to go and get shoes, custom made and all this sort of stuff. So, there was a big gap in the market that I'd identified from as a young girl. And this idea sort of came back to me when I was in Canberra.
So you tried to exploit the entrepreneurial spirit in you at that time.
Yeah.
To solve a problem that you'd been dealing with for a long time.
Absolutely. And this was, as it doesn't necessarily sound significant, but it was a huge problem for me. I got married in shoes which were 3 sizes too small, and my toes were touching the ground, by about that much.
At what stage did you lose the shoes?
Lose what shoes?
At which stage did you take the shoes off?
Oh no, I kept them on all night because my feet were so blistered that if I took them off, I definitely wouldn't been able to put them back on, and I don't think I would have been able to walk. So
there's something I just couldn't understand.
Yeah.
But I feel your pain.
Yeah, it was painful.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I started looking at this idea of setting up a shoe business. And so I spent all my spare time in Canberra because, I just moved there, didn't have a lot of, friends or networks. And Jules actually, even though he was working, was finishing off his PhD. So every spare second he had, he was studying. And so I used that time to start doing some research and having a look at this idea of having a business that, sold these shoes. And one thing led to another, and I ended up finding some suppliers over in Italy. Started sort of working on a bit of a business plan, but it was still at that point wasn't really something I thought I'd go into. Jules and I got married while we were in Canberra. We came back here and got married, but got married in that year and then shortly moved back to Adelaide. And it was when we moved back to Adelaide, so I needed to look for another job, and I thought I'll stay in private practice because I was enjoying it, but full-time was too much. So I found a part-time private practice job, and at that point thought, I'm just going to give this a go. This is, if I don't do it now, some kids will come along or something will happen and we won't do it. So I started the part-time job and started properly working on this business plan, and found a little shop, signed a lease. Still hadn't secured my supplies.
That doesn't sound like you at all.
No, it doesn't sound like me at all.
Signed the lease before I found my supplies?
Yeah. So signed the lease.
I think you were just committing.
I committed, yeah. And I had 4 months, I'd signed this and the lease started. That was in, when was that? That was in January, so I had about 6 months. And then we opened in June. Bought a ticket to the Milan Shoe Fair. Had no idea what I was doing. Made my dad come with me. We had this great little adventure over there. And, turned up to Milan I've never seen so many shoes in my life. And, went to this international shoe fair, and there were thousands and thousands of exhibitors there. And I mean thousands of them. And of all of the exhibitors there were 3 that could make big shoes. So prior to going, I'd been in contact with the consulate here and asked them to sort of reach out, and I can't even remember, but, sort of one person found someone else for me who found someone else who found someone else. So by the time I got there, I knew the 3 places that I was looking for. And as it turned out, one of them just did Ugg boots and slippers. One of them did shoes for adult shops. And the other one became my first supplier.
Right.
Yeah.
You didn't choose the adult shop?
No, I did not. I did not. Yes, so that was in 2007. So that was, February 2007, secured the suppliers. I met a lovely bloke over there from Brisbane who imported shoes himself. I'd in the meantime done a short course about how to import and export shoes and all this rubbish. And then in 1st of June we opened the doors. And it was great. It was everything I sort of imagined as far as having this, this little oasis, this lovely little place that was just safe for women like me who had big feet. And these women could come in, and it didn't matter which shoe they liked. They knew that they could get it in their, in their size, and it was wonderful. So I was doing that part time, working in the shop part time. I was doing my private practice physio job part time. I got Jules working a couple of hours on a Friday night.
And then you had children.
Yeah, I had children sort of a year into the business opening. I had, was pregnant with Ned, and remember vividly the day that I went into labour with him. I worked in the morning in between contractions.
Ordered some shoes.
No, I didn't order any shoes. Just kept them going out the door. And I remember at lunchtime I was only scheduled to work to the middle of the day, and then I had someone come in the afternoon. And anyway, Ned was born 10 p.m. that night. So,
wow,
it was mental, and.
You like it like that. So
I do.
Yeah.
The business, it was funny. The shop was 2 stories, so all the shoes were upstairs. So
where was the shop?
It was on Grenfell Street in the old East End market buildings.
Okay.
So near the corner of East Terrace and Grenfell Street.
Yeah.
Charlock Circuit, on the corner of Charlock Circuit, yeah. So all the shoes, we kept them upstairs. So, people would be asking for things, and I would, strategically go up there as I knew a contraction was coming, have the contraction upstairs, get their shoes, come back down. It's stupid.
Ladies and gentlemen, commitment.
Oh, commitment, stupidity.
You are, but I think what's really important, even just from listening to the story, and you're a really...
It's a long story, sorry.
But you're a good storyteller. You say this stuff really well. But you demonstrate resourcefulness, you're action driven, it's commitment, and it's focus. And I think anyone who gets to know you quickly realizes that you going upstairs to have contractions in advance and then come back down is exactly what makes you a phenomenal adversary to anyone, because you are so committed to the cause, right? And I think that when we get to later on, I think there's a really good lesson about to come in terms of what it takes to truly be an entrepreneur and some of the decisions you have to make. So I'll let you finish the story. I've got an advantage. I know all the stuff.
You know the story.
Yeah.
So, so child number 1 came along. I was back at work 2 weeks after Ned was born, which was, again, another stupid move. But I'd gone to work one day. Jules had gone in, actually, just to drop something off, and I was at home with the new baby. And... the staff member that, we were employing to look after the shop that morning was asleep on the counter. And I gave Jules a call and said, did you get that thing in there? Was that okay? And he's like, oh, yeah. I could tell something was going on. I said, what's going on? And he said,
Jules trying to
he goes,
not very good at that.
Because when my foot sort of hit the ground as I stepped in, I woke this person up and da-da-da. Anyway, I was furious. And so toddled in there that afternoon and told them to go home, and there I was back at work 2 weeks later. So anyway, and then Ivy came along 20 months later, ish.
It wasn't enough.
It was not enough.
I say this to you all the time. It wasn't enough.
No, I know.
Part-time physio, full-time shop.
Yeah. Yep.
Let's go have 1 child, let's go have 2.
So I was still going to Milan twice a year as well.
Yeah. Jules was getting more grey hair by this time.
Jules' hair was starting to go grey. But no, he was pretty good.
Actually, does he even have grey hair?
Yeah, no, he does. He's got some grey hair just on the side.
Right, okay.
Yeah. And then what happened next? Then Stella was born. No, Stella wasn't born then. At that point... So just going back a little bit, so in 2007 when we started, what we realised really, really quickly was that we were doing something that wasn't being done elsewhere. And, we were located in, little old Adelaide. We were very much a location shop, a destination shop, so people weren't just wandering past.
Online retail wasn't really a
Online
thing.
retail wasn't a thing. However, we were getting somehow people were finding out about us, and we did have a really basic website. Jules had actually created this website. And it's not like now we can just get something off the shelf, and you just pay a small fee. He'd invested a serious amount of time doing this and then sort of integrated PayPal into it so that people could actually purchase things from us online. And very early on, we started getting orders from like a few in Australia, but like England and France and the US and New Zealand and, Italy. So we were importing these shoes from Italy and then sending them back. It was quite interesting, but...
Imagine if you'd be able to create a marketplace like we have now.
Oh, absolutely.
So you're way ahead of your time.
Unfortunately, probably just a little, maybe a little bit too early. And I remember my accountant at the time saying to me, he goes, "Oh, Laura, no one's ever going to buy shoes on the internet." And because I was telling him about how we were starting to sell shoes online.
Accountants have been wrong.
I know, but it was really funny. I'll never forget the conversation because he was like, "Oh, that's just ridiculous. It's never going to happen." And I told him how Jules had made this website, and he was like, "I wouldn't waste your time doing that." Luckily, I don't take advice from accountants. So that was great. And anyway, we thought, let's invest in this online space a little bit. But again, like you said, I mean, it's not like the marketplace is now. And it was a big investment. It was about $30,000 for us to get a website, that could just do real basic sort of, sales.
Yeah.
But we thought it was worth the investment. So we went forward and did that. And that certainly did, really amp up how many shoes we were selling online compared to in the bricks and mortar store. And it was what allowed us to... And I can't remember how old Ivy was, but I'm at home with 2 little kids, and I thought, the online stuff is starting to sort of happen. Maybe we should actually close the shop because it was getting difficult, with 2 little kids and managing staff and, all that sort of stuff. And obviously, if we didn't have to pay rent, that would be great. So we moved the business to an online business. And for our Adelaide customers, we kept, so once a month, I think it was, I can't remember, once a month, once every 6 weeks, we'd do what we'd call a showing, an Adelaide showing. And like I said, my parents both own their own businesses, and Mum had a premises which, it's a dental surgery, but we transformed the reception area of this dental surgery for a weekend into a little mini shoe shop. So it was like a little pop-up shop. So I didn't pay any rent for that. It was a bit of a pain.
Sure, loved it. Co-referral.
Yeah.
Come in for shoes and maybe we'll book you a dentist appointment.
Yeah. Well, she does kids as well, so it didn't really work that way. But anyway, I was able to lean on Mum and say, can I do this? And sure, it was fine. And the space worked really, really well. So we'd have these regular showings. So our Adelaide customers would pretty much, wait, for that every month or 6 weeks, can't remember what it was. Have our little portable FPOS machine. That was great. So the business was going really, really well in sort of having that balance. Then I think I got pregnant with Stella, and, being pregnant and having the 2 kids and, going to Milan twice a year and, trying to fulfill these online orders. I was doing this all myself, and I can remember lots of days customers would ring up and, I've got 2 kids screaming. And I'm trying to be professional and, I'm throwing chocolate biscuits at Ned and I'm shutting doors on Ivy and,
I can picture this
and I'm on the phone, I'm walking to the back corner of the yard so that I can actually have some silence.
That's shame. You still do that now, wouldn't you?
Yeah. But, I think back on that as well. And that was really, really tough. That was really, really tough. And even, simple things like being able to wrap some shoes up and get them to the post office to send when you've got, a 2-year-old and a baby,
absolutely
near impossible, But we kept going like that. And I think it was, I was just about to give birth to Stella and I'd been to the hospital to have a checkup, and I can't remember what happened, but something happened at the checkup. Everything was fine, but I don't know if the doctor said something to me. Something just flicked, and I just thought, you know what, I don't think I can keep doing this. And I was really, really sad. And I'm sad now.
Because that business lasted, 4 or 5 years?
7 years.
7 years.
Yeah. And I just knew, like, something had happened in that doctor visit, and I was by myself, didn't have the other kids with me, but I just knew, and I was driving home and I didn't have the radio on, I normally do. I was just like silent. I just thought, oh God, I know what I have to do. So that was sad. But I, over the next sort of, a few months, sort of wound the business down, had another showing or so and just sort of got rid of everything and shut the business. And with a debt of about $50,000 as well.
That would have been difficult.
It was awful.
Experience.
It was awful. And at the end of the day, we didn't, it just didn't turn out how I wanted it to. There were lots of factors at play. And we were left owing $50,000 on this money that we, loaned in order to get the business going. So, that was tricky. And it was more, the sadness was more my sadness. Initially I thought, I'm letting people down. I don't want, and when I say people, my customers I was sad for, but more so like my husband who'd endured this 7 years of craziness. and for what?
Mum
And my children, who didn't really know what's going on, but probably on some level they were suffering too. And my parents as well, particularly my dad, who'd been a really big supporter of me, and my mum is too. But Dad and I would always talk a lot about this sort of stuff. And I remember he was actually the first person I rang before I told Jules what I wanted to do, because I think I just needed him to tell me that was okay. Yeah. So that was my first
radio.
That was my first radio.
But you know what? I think that the beauty about it is, and we've talked about this a lot. You learn some really valuable lessons through that time, and you also manufactured some really clever pivots that, based on timing, could have played out very differently today. I mean, today you wouldn't need to spend $30,000 on a basic e-commerce. You could pop it up on Shopify.
Absolutely.
Spend $2 to $3 grand, populate it, drive it, drive your SEO, your SEM. People now want to buy online. COVID has really made online shopping so much more accessible. To the point that Australia Post and FedEx can't keep up. UPS for that matter as well. But I guess after that experience, and I wouldn't call that, by the way, I know we've talked about this, so I would never call that a failure experience. You had to go at something, you built a business for 7 years and then just made the right decision to say enough's enough. A lot of people would not have made that. A lot of people would have held on to it, burnt themselves into the ground, or dug a hole into the ground, and probably that cumulative debt at 50 would have probably ended up being 100 or 150.
Absolutely.
So I think it just shows that you already had a good head for making business decisions. It's kind of, though, there was so much going on.
There was so much going on, and
I mean, being a mum and a wife of 3 children and doing that and then still doing the travel, we can't take for granted the mental load that would have put on you. And you and I talk about that a lot too. You were the first person that introduced me to The Wife Drought by Annabelle Crabb, saying, Christian, you work with so many women. Do you remember that? That you get this, but you really should read this book because it will make you better. And in fairness, it has. And I've now read a lot of Annabelle Crabb's essays because of that reason. And I really do like her work. We could be here all day.
Sorry, long story.
No. So once you had decided that the shoe shop was no longer, you carried this $50,000 burden. You went back to becoming a physio. At this point.
I never stopped that. So that's just bumbled along. But I just did that for a while.
But you kind of diverted into a stream of physiotherapy, right? In that rehabilitation but oncology area. Why don't you just, without going into too much of that, but the reason why I've just led you to that is that's kind of then led you to many ways to the next journey, but you did something in between all this and you went back to university. You want to tell us a little bit about that journey? Because I think it will give our listeners context as to where you are right now.
Sure.
And I guess that you never really lost this itch to be a dynamic businesswoman. Business person.
Yeah. After the shoe business closed, there was a period of time that I was very satisfied just working for someone else. But that didn't last very long. Once I'd sort of gotten over the trauma of closing the business, that I thought that, was going to see me until I died. But I realised that like I said before, I knew that I was not going to be able to keep doing this, working for someone else and being told what to do and not being able to change things if I wanted to. So I thought, well, I don't know what to do next, but I started looking at some study options. When I had the shoe business, I was in a through Business SA, had a mentoring program that I was involved in. So I contacted my mentor and caught up with him and had a chat about, MBA seemed like the obvious thing to do. And I don't think I really understood the nuances of, an MBA versus something like what I ended up doing, which was a Masters of Innovation and Entrepreneurship. And it was him that sort of pointed me in that direction. He said, Lauren, I know you very well. You'd do an MBA and that'd be great, but it's not going to serve you in the way that you probably think it would. You'd have to end up going working for someone else. It's very sort of looking behind you, in a big corporation. He said, my sense of you is that you want to do your own thing, and this Masters of Innovation and Entrepreneurship is going to be much more suited to you.
It's one of the best decisions you ever made.
And it was a great decision.
Why was it such a great decision?
It was a really great decision.
I actually think that you grew significantly by doing it. And it is a very good postgraduate course.
It was a great course. It was very applied.
Yeah.
I enjoyed the fact that the people who were teaching us were people who had got their hands dirty. It wasn't just sort of sitting up here in sort of this academic sphere. And so I started doing that part-time, applied to get a scholarship, and then was successful in that, which meant that I had to go full-time, which was busy, but also great. So that
you were used to busy.
Yeah, no, that suited me well. So I did that over 2 years.
So then you decided to get busier.
Then I decided to get busier. So
while you were doing your masters.
Yeah. So the masters, a lot of the projects, like I said, they were very, very applied. And what I was trying to do, I think sort of my mindset at the time around my physiotherapy career was that it may or may not be something that I use in the future. Mm-hmm. I was really open to anything, but I was hoping that in doing this masters, it would unlock some thoughts or some ideas, and that I would, at the end of this 2 years, have a bit of a direction as to what I wanted to do next. And I remember one of the projects I had to do, and I thought, I won't. It was doing a what's it called, business plan. And I thought, I won't use physio. I won't sort of do anything to do with that. But then I decided actually I would, because I knew the area so well, and came up with this business plan. And it was what sort of now is my actual business, which is Lift. So it started. Lift started as a project for one of my uni assignments.
But it was also there was an undercurrent.
There were a few.
One of your best friends ended up having a cancer diagnosis.
That's right.
And so while you were doing that assignment, you did have a vision, a very clear vision of what is Lift Cancer Care Services, which is a specialised day hospital that focuses on supportive services for cancer survivors, or cancer patients, who, with the objective of beyond survivorship, which is a wonderful mandate, and I feel very privileged to be part of it. But you want to just now tell us a little bit about Lift? I think what's really important, unless there was something else you wanted to touch on in the story, but I think
you covered it there. I mean, it was the project. It was a perfect storm. I was restless. I knew I couldn't keep doing what I was doing with my work. The project was sort of, I was discovering things. I thought this actually looks pretty great. And and a really good friend of mine got her diagnosis, and I watched her go through something which was awful. But I also could see that she couldn't get really easy access to everything she needed. And to me, it just seemed really basic. It seemed very obvious that all of these things that someone with cancer needs, all of these allied health, needs, should be available under one roof. So Lift Cancer Care Services is the business that I run now. And Lift is unique in two ways. So, we've brought together a range of very commonly required allied health service practitioners under the one roof. So you can walk in one door and you can have access to a dietitian and a psychologist and a physio or a speech therapist, all with oncology training. So very niche,
very specialised,
and then the other thing that makes Lift unique is that, as you mentioned before, we're also an accredited licensed day hospital, and we provide exercise medicine treatment to people who are undergoing cancer therapies in our capacity as a hospital, and that's a first. So that's very, very unique.
It is a world first. In fact, I'm not going to let Lauren say that, but I would definitely say it. We've done that much research, and the medical journals are now publishing the research that we've done in collaboration with universities. It is the one-stop shop, but what's been an incredible journey is that it's so novel. To think that, how was it? Francis put it. If you explain, when Francis is a well-regarded oncologist, and what did he say to you?
He said that, so this is the exercise side of what we're doing, which is, like I said, very novel. He said that if the exercise treatment that we were delivering at Lift were a pharmaceutical drug that was being considered for the PBS, it would be approved immediately without question because of the outcomes it delivers. And the outcomes being, improved survival up to 60%, reduced risk of cancer coming back by up to 35%, and also management of the really common side effects that people who are going through cancer therapies experience, things that really impact their quality of life, such as fatigue, as an example.
Look, you are one of the most humble people when it comes to talking about your business. It drives me crazy because Lift is. I've had the privilege of also knowing patients that have come to Lift and how they talk about Lift. And these are people I know really well, and I also see from our patients in terms of how they leave. We have so many patient stories, and some who have gone on and had wonderful lives and are living their best life, and others who have been our greatest ambassadors, who we were able enough and fortunate enough to give an extra 6 months of life to, but 6 really good months. So I think there's this really fine balance, and I know that you and the team do take it really personally when there is a loss of life at Lift, particularly from someone that we've looked after time and time again. But even when you speak to the families, and they say my husband or wife's best time was being at Lift. And I mean, I almost get emotional. I'm not letting you say it because I know you start crying. This is about the only time we ever see you cry.
I'm not sure if I'll cry.
Right? Oh, it's the only time. We watch those videos and we literally all sit there and almost like ready to cry. And I think that's the most powerful thing about Lift as an organisation. But it's really underpinned by a phenomenal culture that you and Alex and the team have created. But you are there. You're at the coalface every single day. And I think that that's something we've worked on forever, but you have done it because you've done every role in that business. And I think there's this really gross understatement when people say observe Lift from afar. What is it? We're 40? Is it 40 people now?
Staff?
Yeah.
No, 30 something.
We're close.
We're getting
close, right?
Numbers are coming up.
So, and that's a business that's 3 years. And growing from one location to multi-site locations. The expansion plan is phenomenal. The opportunity to serve more people, right, and provide this novel model of care. It's come with a lot of challenges, and I want to jump to a question now that people have some insight into who you are, how busy you are, because what the message that I want to try and allow our audience to understand is, it doesn't matter who's sitting in the hot seat. They're just another normal person. They just work harder. Right? It's one of the biggest patterns we're seeing is this drive to work harder. But you've got a really strong purpose. You really stand by the values at Lift. And maybe if you can just tell us what those values are, and I guess the purpose and the driving force behind why and what you do and what inspires your team to do what they do every day.
So, I mean, our values are really simple. Our values are care, empowerment, and accessibility. And one of the things that, I strongly believe is that, you hear everyone say, you can teach anyone anything, but you can't teach those values. So we recruit by the values. And it's one of the first conversations I'll have with someone before I even meet them face to face on the phone, just to get a sense of who they are. But I'll talk about the values, and I'll get them to talk, tell me what their values are. And it really, like I said, it underpins what we do at Lift. And I suppose the people that we're looking after at Lift, and I haven't had cancer myself. But, as a health professional, I've been around people who, not just cancer, but, have got, significant health challenges. And, they deserve sort of a cohesive team of professionals who, when they interact with them, it's not about anything else other than delivering a wonderful service. And I think that our values allow that to happen really beautifully at Lift. And we just keep it really simple. So, we talk about our values in all stakeholder sort of relations. So whether it's colleague to colleague, or whether it's, patient to staff member, or whether it's, how we talk with our external referrers, or how we sort of think about interacting with them, we just try and make all of our decisions by those values of care, empowerment and accessibility. And my message to the team is always, if you keep those 3 values in mind, when you're working out what you should be doing or having, trying to make a decision, you can't really go wrong. And, I think it's something that we found that when there have been, when there's maybe been a little bit of resistance, or, any sort of things that maybe, not going 100% as they can, as we sort of want them to, those values serve as a really, really nice way just to refocus people. So, they're our values.
I think that the one thing about Lift, and for anyone that wants to go through and have a look, please, consider the COVID scenarios at the moment, but please just go on the website and you can literally do a virtual walkthrough. The wonderful thing is it's not just a discussion about the values, it's a demonstration of the values.
Yep.
And what I love about what you just said then, at Lift, you use values as the boundaries for decision making across the entire company, from reception right through to the GPs and to the clinicians. And I think that's a wonderful use of culture at play, well, a wonderful demonstration of culture at play, but a wonderful use of values in how they should actually be working for people. Lauren, you talked about your childhood and you talked about your mum and dad being in business. Is there anything in particular from your childhood that you think shaped the type of business person you are today other than your mum and dad?
I think being an eldest child helped. So I'm the eldest of 4. And I think the biggest thing is that my parents did work for themselves and I watched that. And, without on a really conscious level paying attention to what was going on, I was, there was messaging all around me all the time, because at the kitchen table, you'd hear them talk about problems they were having or, challenges or whatever. I think that's absolutely the biggest thing. Like I said, being an eldest child was quite helpful, I think, as far as, as anyone who's an eldest knows, you like to help control things and, make decisions.
You were not deterred from, it always fascinates me. One of the other the reason why I went and asked that question, even though I had the answer, is one of the common themes that I'm finding is most people had their one parent at least to look up to from that point. And instead of being deterred, I wasn't the same. I grew up in not so much directly in my family, but my grandparents on my mother's side worked really hard, ran catering business, supermarkets, as immigrants. But then my father was always a very hard worker in the diplomatic circles, but then went into running the family business. And it's interesting. You'd think you'd get deterred from watching your parents go and work ridiculous hours, and yet you don't. I guess it's the same reason why we see a lot of my friends who I went to school with have become doctors like their parents. And doctors' work are ridiculous, especially surgeons. Obstetricians are on call all the time, and you think, wow, you really, even though you charge X, it's really not enough when you consider you have no life because you're delivering life. It's funny how that hasn't been a deterrent. If anything, it's encouraged people. And in your case, particularly, you voiced that. Your mum's a dentist, right? Dad was a
geologist.
So I don't know why I always think your dad's a hairdresser. If he's listening, he's going to kill me. I don't know why. I just always imagine you going to me as a hairdresser and there's a geologist. But I think what's interesting is they're two high-level professions that then they have their own businesses to manage. And you were motivated by that, but I think deep down you've always been a high performer. That's probably, and you always want to be better and be more. I know that because sometimes I've got to rein you in because I'm easy. I can drive you as hard as we want, but you've got to manage that because you've got this balance that you've got to achieve because you're satisfying all stakeholders. Business is not all flowers and rainbows. We know that, you know that, but what failure experience do you think set you up for the success you're having today?
Well, like you said before, the obvious thing to talk about would be my shoe business, but I don't see that as a failure. I don't actually see anything as a failure because people who maybe just meet me now and see, that I'm managing, running this business that's, doing well and is growing, people look at that and go, oh, she's been lucky or, an overnight success or whatever. But,
no luck there.
No, but...
only persistence.
But I think that, for me, my journey started back when I did start that shoe business in my early 20s and, did that for 7 years and, learned a lot of lessons around, all elements of business. And, continued educating myself, did the masters. I also sort of, ran my own little physio thing for a while in there. So I don't point to anything as a failure. I point to it all as a learning experience. And all of those things, all of those have contributed to where I am now.
I mean, one of the biggest things that you've experienced is because the LIFT method, the model of care, is so unique. You've encountered some significant challenges on the journey, which for most people would have been failure experiences and they would have given up. Right? Now, some of these are a bit commercial in confidence, so I'm not going to talk about them. You'll have to talk about them. But if you wanted to share, but I guess that question is, we know that there's been some moments where I know other clients would have given up. I know other people that would have truly and utterly gone, fuck it, it's just too hard. And press that what we call the fuck it button, right?
Yep.
Whereas you double down. You have this unbelievable trait that I get the privilege of seeing. And a few of my clients have it. But you double down. Do you want to share anything in this area that you feel comfortable with that would demonstrate that to our listeners about something that's so gigantic that you then just go, nah, come on, let's double down and go harder?
Like you said, there's a few things I probably don't want to talk about.
I'm just thinking of particular ones that you can talk about.
Sure. Broadly speaking, every area of the business has been a challenge because it's new. Every area of the business.
New just not as a new business.
Not just a new business.
New approaches.
A new approach, correct.
And in the medical, that's you were on the same page.
Yep.
I think if you could just explain that, because unlike most businesses who have one challenge, you've had many at Lift, from even getting an oncologist at the beginning to look at the model of care. And that is true entrepreneurship at its core, because you've had to not only, in the medical profession, it's not about persuasion, because there are a whole bunch of rules. You can't just go and make shit up and then go, hey, follow me.
Yeah.
That's what I want. And what did you do? When, you got hit by some really early challenges that should have shut you down, right? And yet you doubled down. You went and got more advice. I'm telling the story because I know it. But do you want to just share? I think there's some really good value for our listeners in that.
I mean, to tell you the truth, the whole thing was hard, very hard. And that first 6 months, 12 months was incredibly hairy.
Talk to us about those first 6 months.
It's hard to talk. It's hard to talk about it because I can't sort of articulate really clearly what the challenges were, because I think what you're referring to is that no part of my mind ever entertains the idea that something's not going to happen, right?
Yeah.
So I know what I want to do, and I know what we need to do, and that's where I'm going to get to.
So I'm glad you just mentioned that, because Alex, who's a videographer who's filming this, the biggest feedback he's given me since we've been filming the series is there's this undercurrent that he's seeing from episode to episode, and you've just said what it is. Each person that's sat in the hot seat has this incredible belief that they can make it happen. And in your case, it wasn't just a blind belief. You knew that if you put in all the action steps, you could overcome them. And a lot of people didn't think you could do it, right? And you did it. And now the world is benefiting, right, from this unique model of care that is improving lives. And it's, and look, as I said, I have the privilege, and hopefully people are thinking, hang on, I've got to look at this business. I've got to absolutely jump onto your computer right now and Google or put in the URL, liftcancercareservices.com. We've got the .com and the .au.
Lift Cancer Care.
liftcancercare.com.au. And just watch the video content that we've produced as an organisation. When even we were being told we couldn't even share stuff like that. It was like, being told that we couldn't do patient stories. But you couldn't do a testimonial. So we went and followed all the steps to be able to get the patients to tell their story. And these little hurdles that may not seem like a lot, but in the medical profession, really challenging. being able to get people to appreciate the model of care, and then having to go do research papers. I mean, so many businesses do not need to do that.
No.
Right? But we are dealing with people's lives. And one of the reasons we're an accredited day hospital is because we are protecting the interests of those that are more vulnerable and susceptible to injury or death. So, that's what I guess I'm trying. You might find it a bit harder to explain, but I see it all the time. And for me, it's a marvel because I think to myself, these are things, and I was fortunate enough to see them, but never at that real infant stage. I knew what you were going through, but I came in afterwards when we had more complex challenges. But what you were able to do was build a team, right? And now, and this is the second iteration of the team. And, when you walk in there, the team they're like you. Everyone's like you. Yeah, and I mean, not like they're drones, they're individuals, but they have this passion and love and this care for the business that's so unique. But out of all those moments, what's the one that you almost would have given up on? Was there anything that almost broke you? I mean, you've always been broken a few times.
I feel like I'm always on the edge of just being broken, but I just always
we just give
regenerate.
We just give you a day off and you're back to normal. No, but I think...
Christian, I don't know.
How about you've worked very hard and, your children have missed out on having a mum as much as you'd want to be there. I mean, you still are like the netball coach. Right, by the way, don't ever play against her as a coach. Because how many ejections have you had so far?
Stop it.
never. Right, but the thing is, you fit so much in. And I guess one of the key messages I really want, especially for the young girls and women that are listening to this podcast, right? I mean, you know more than anyone that I am a massive fan of female, well, forget female, business people that are women, mums in the works, because there is so much work there, right? That's the message I want. I want these young women who are, thinking, I've got to compete with all these white male privileged men. How do I compete? Well, it's speaking to people like you.
But also, you don't need to compete. You don't compete. You just run your own race.
That's right. But it's hearing more stories like yours, and unpacking the challenges that you've even dealing with doctors is already hard enough.
Yep.
Right. The medical fraternity can be challenging. There's some incredibly outstanding people in there. But you're not a doctor.
No.
So you had to overcome that challenge too, where people may have not even felt that, well, who are you? Like coming in here, telling us that there's this other model of care. And I think that's hard for you to explain, but it's very easy for me to tell that story because, I had the privilege of being there when you needed that advice. Well, how do I overcome this? How do I do it? A lot of the time you had the answers. Do you know what I mean? And that's what made it better. It was more about how do we strategize? How do we drive? But from your perspective, and I guess the point I'm trying to get an answer out of you, and I'm trying to work out how to get it, right? Overcoming all of these hurdles that you faced, and there were many, what is the top strategy you deployed?
Self-belief.
Yeah.
I might not be saying what you want.
No,
I don't know what the strategy is.
It is self-belief. It's very much for you, it is.
There's no strategy. I don't take no for an answer. We know that. It's just always know there's a way to overcome. It's just belief in that there's always a solution. It might not always be obvious at the start. I very strongly believe in talking to a lot of people and getting advice. I don't know what answer you're looking for. For me, that's what I would point to. It is just knowing that there is always a way to do what it is that you want to do. It's just a matter of finding that way. And,
Let me ask you a really simple question.
Ask me a simple question.
Here's a simple one. Right? No, here's a simple one. Look, I think there's been amazing learning outcomes from just our discussion so far. But what are your top 3 lessons that you would impart about life or business to another driven and smart business person?
I would tell them to keep investing in themselves. Probably number 1. And that could be formal education or, having a mentor or whatever, but never stop learning. What's the question again? Advice.
So what are the top 3 lessons that you would impart about life or business to another smart, driven person?
Get the right team around you. And I mean, for me, that works in two ways. There's obviously the team on the ground who, like you said, reception team and all of our clinicians, but then also the team that people don't see, getting the right accountant, getting the right advisor, getting the right lawyer, getting all of those other support people who are aligned and who understand your business.
And who believe in you.
And who believe in you and who know you. And what would my third one be? I mean, have a day off every now and again. It's probably a good one. I mean, the whole thing of, and I suppose that this whole work-life balance thing I don't necessarily believe in. I think it's more around just finding for you what the right harmony is, because for me there is no such thing as balance between work and life. I'm always at work. Doesn't matter where I am. Doesn't matter if I'm with my kids down the park. I'm always just, the little part of my brain is always thinking about something. And so it's not this lane or this lane. And I think particularly as women, we get told, there's a lot of narrative around work-life balance and, can you have it all, or, yes, but not at the same time, and all this sort of rubbish. Well, I don't subscribe to that. And I think that if I was talking to a female who, wanted to be, getting married and having children and doing the, that sort of traditional thing, I'd say absolutely you can do that. And we're all different. I'm very different to a lot of people I know who look at me, friends, females, and they're just like, I could never do what you're doing because I just want to be just a mum. Whereas if I was just a mum, I would go crazy. And I think that's just me being more comfortable with who I am. That's just me. You
love having it all.
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Right. And what I love, and I think this is a really good message that's just come through, you can have it all.
I think you can, and I don't think but again, a lot of people will disagree with that. But I know that for me, that I can. And it's not balance, it's just a harmony. These two things aren't separate from each other for me, work and, life. They are one and the same thing. Oh. And it's just about, knowing when you need to pull back a little bit and when you're getting towards that point that you potentially might break, and just sort of, being kind to yourself and, I want everything done yesterday, and sometimes I can't.
Some people are going to say that, of course I would say what I'm going to say next because I have the privilege of working with you, but where I think you are very smart is that, and you said it earlier, it's about having the right support people in play. You're very good at surrounding yourself with really good people like Bruce and myself and other people. And even Alex on the board, you have this ability to recognise, and I think this is for you in the shoe business is what it taught you, where resource limited, you couldn't really have the luxury of all these people. But early on in this business, you made the decision to go, you know what, I'm going to find the smartest people that can support me, not transactionally, right? We genuinely, if you have a look, for anyone, for those of you listening, if you knew the circle that I'm talking to, everyone cares beyond the transaction. It's not the money in, right? It's the effort out that we all care about. And that's because that's you. So you found people, right? And this is a really good quality. I mean, you're saying it, but I don't think it's clear for everyone. I want to be really clear. When you said the word team, it's the right people on the bus, but on which bus, right? For you, it's not only the people that have to do all the heavy lifting at lift, right? It's the people in the background that have to support you. It's about, your relationship with Jules. He's incredible support, right? And he has his own career. Your 3 kids, they're amazing, right? They're great kids. They're loud and they're active, and they have the same needs as every other children. But it's also how you behave as a mother, how you look after them. So I agree with you. You've demonstrated to me that you can have everything you want. And I'm no different. I have everything I have because I've got Lucy at home who is she works full time now in the company, and she looks after our children, and we find our own balance because balance is different to everybody, and that's a really critical message that you pulled through, and you did it really subtly. And I'm trying to kind of throw the method acting out the window and go stage acting and blow it up, because so many people think that balance is something that you prescribe to and it is a formula. it is a formula, but it's whatever formula applies to your life. Yeah. It's the tolerance that you can create, right? And that's no difference to running a business. It's the tolerance. And as humans, we become intolerant, right, about what other people want. And that is why our friendship circles shift. It's why, the relationships that we form. Jim Rogan, I say this in almost every podcast, we become the sum of the 5 people that we hang around the most. And I look at the people that I hang around the most, I am so in love with the people I hang around the most because they are winners, they are doers, they are victors, not victims. And I think that's one of your really good qualities is that no matter how bad your day is, right? So you say to me, I have to talk to you every morning because in that morning, doesn't matter how I feel, I know I'm going to be better. And sometimes I think, crap, I've got to think about what I have to say today because I really don't want to be nice. But the truth is, it's not about being nice. It's about knowing what we have to do. And it energizes us. It's what fills our cup, what allows us to get on with the day. For you, it's a love of what you do. Yep. Without that business being an identity, because it's not your identity. Your identity is who you are at home. But it's this inertia, this drive that you create. And I see it. I see it in the people. And I think that, again, as I said, I feel very privileged that I get to see that. Let's talk about when you're overwhelmed and unfocused, right? Okay. What do you do to realign? Other than call me. What do you do? I take a deep breath usually. Right?
I think what I have found to be the best strategy when I'm overwhelmed, and to be honest, I'm overwhelmed a lot, actually.
Yeah, but your tolerance is high.
I have a high tolerance, and I have a high tolerance for stress. But, there's fairly consistently a lot going on. So I think what I've found is a really, really great strategy is getting it out. It's writing it down. There's the emotional side of my mind, and there's the rational side of my mind. And that feeling of being overwhelmed is when those two things are all just, playing with each other. And I think, having to actually articulate what I'm feeling overwhelmed about or what, like a to-do list or frustrations, whatever it is, actually just having to articulate that takes that emotional, feeling away from whatever it is that's going on and allows me to, to sort of see in black and white on a piece of paper, okay, this is what's happening. And sometimes I'll do that in a work context, then also in a other, family, whatever context, so that I can see everything on one page and go, right, this is what's in my head at the moment. But obviously what doesn't get written down is that emotional layer. But by doing that, I think it just allows me to go, okay, that's what it is. And that usually, if I can sort of see those things, helps me to go, okay, well, this is okay. I've been in this position before. I've had all of these things on my plate before. For whatever reason, though, I'm feeling unsettled. Sometimes I usually know why that is. But it just strips out the other noise that might be in my head that's causing me to feel overwhelmed. Okay, great answer, and a wonderful solution there for anyone that's feeling overwhelmed or unfocused about how to realign. And I'm a practitioner of that too. What new or existing habit do you have that has improved your life the most, that someone else could steal from you? Yep. One that I'm not always good at, but when I'm good at it, it's amazing. It's scheduling everything. So I know you smile because we talk about this a bit. We work on chunking so much. Yeah. I mean, and this is the challenge because there are so many different things that I'm sitting across. It can be easy to become distracted, or when I'm at work, there'll be people asking me things or I get pulled in different directions. But I think just having a lot of discipline around how I use my time when I'm working. And I love it because I get so much done. If this period of time has been allocated to this, that's what I'm doing, and I focus on that 100%. And we work very hard at that. And one of the biggest reasons, and I think there's a really good lesson here to be learned, you are an outstanding physiotherapist in oncology, right? You're one of the only people in Australia that's actually certified and registered in that space. So it's very easy for your team to draw you back into that clinical role as the CEO. And because you are very demanding on the output of the team in terms of the standards, because obviously
we've got to make sure we deliver the correct dosage of exercise as a medicine. You can be drawn really easily back into the EMC. So that's the exercise medicine clinic. I got to stop using acronyms. And so that's a really big challenge for you. And I know that this is a challenge that other business owners face all the time. I have other clients, and constantly we have to draw them back. Do you think having the support team to help you understand that is a benefit for you?
Yeah, I think it is. The problem as well is I really love doing that. I love getting my hands dirty, and I think that as the CEO and one of the business owners, I think it's really valuable to see what's going on at the grassroots level by doing some work. So I'm a little bit mixed about it, but absolutely I need. It's about boundaries, and it's about just having those boundaries in place so that. If I am wearing that clinician hat, then I'm wearing that clinician hat, and that's okay. But the rest of the time, which is the majority of the time, I'm not. And there is, we have built a team and team leaders and so forth who who perform that role. Yes, I could do it, but that's not what I spend my time doing. And I have touch points still with all of those key people. But it's tricky, but it's just about discipline again and boundaries and structure.
Great. And I think the key message there is scheduling the priorities.
Yep.
When you're busy, getting that done. And I think that's why I really enjoy speaking to you, because you are really busy with everything, not just work, everything, life. And you can have it all. It's just a question of putting it all together. And it's that Rubik's Cube.
Yep.
To get fit, you've got to move all the moving parts in the right order.
Yep.
Now, you don't get a lot of time to read.
No.
Right? Because I throw books at you all the time. But has there any particular book ever that you've read that has greatly influenced your life? Or a book that you would highly recommend to someone to read? Every man should read The Wife Drought.
I love The Wife Drought. Off the top of my head, I'm going to say no. I've read lots of books, actually. Not at the moment.
But you don't actually have much time at the moment.
No, I don't have time at the moment.
But by the way, you're always a caveat. You're always learning in many different ways.
Yeah.
I mean, you run professional development programs for all of the team.
Yep.
That's now other people are running it as well, but you have to be in those.
Yep.
So there's always some kind of immersion in continuous learning.
Sorry to interrupt. I think with my reading though as well, and like you said, you've given me lovely lists of business books and
we built a library.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, that Atomic Habits, which I read actually recently, I really loved that actually.
That is a very good book.
That was excellent. I think as well when I read, I rarely will read a book from cover to cover. I generally go looking for something. So I use them as a resource as opposed to going, I just might just read this book for fun. I enjoy reading and I enjoy looking at different perspectives. And like I said, I've actually got a ton of books next to my bed, and they've all got bookmarks in them because I just don't generally just read a book. I will just,
I think what's really
dip
smart,
in and out of it.
What you've just said is really smart, because there is a theory that about 20 pages of a 200-page book is all you actually will retain, because that's what serves you.
Yes.
And I think that the message here is, if you're time poor, just read something.
Yeah.
But read things that are of interest to you, that serve you in what you're doing. You're probably going to hate me telling everybody, you love The Bold and the Beautiful.
I'm not. I'm proud about that.
Right. It is actually your de-stress.
Yeah, it is.
Okay. And it's really interesting because I give Lauren so much grief, like even on a podcast. But it is your de-stress. And you will do that. And, we've talked about this. I'm like, well, if you need more time to do more work, you can just, ignore the Bold and Beautiful recording. And you're like, no. Right? And it's really interesting. People have these little quirks. And I think for you, that's a really cool little quirk that you watch that. I at the moment, I'm into Billions, and I've been watching episode after episode. And, me, I don't ever watch TV. So it's kind of like I'm either working or I'm doing something with the kids or in between that or hanging out with Luch. But I've gotten addicted because it's teaching me this, it's bringing back memories of my previous life, but also this whole attitude around getting things done and how you have to maneuver and twist and turn. So, it's my de-stress because I think about it, and then the problem is I go to bed going, how do I do that better? how can I actually do that better? And then, it's a bit insane. But Lauren, we've had a wonderful conversation. I'm just conscious of time. Do you have a business hero at all?
No. No, I don't.
So who do you aspire for if you had to look at someone that you want to learn something from, who would it be?
I don't know. No.
You very much are your own person.
I think so.
And it's really interesting. A lot of people have struggled with the hero question because I'm not really looking for a business hero. It's more of who is it that drives you to go, you know what, they're really good at what they do. But again, you focus so much on what you need to do. But I know that you're also very aware of your surroundings.
Yeah, I think I am aware of my surroundings, but there's no one person I'd point to. I think I know that, like you said before, about everyone sitting in this chair is just a person. That's why I think I don't really subscribe to heroes actually at all, because I think that everyone is just a person, and that, people achieve things, but it's not because they've got superpowers or that they've got some magic, thing that no one else has. I think it's just that they're clear about what they want to do, they're focused, and they just keep going until they get what they need.
So who would you say are your key influences?
My parents, absolutely. That's a big, when I talk about my work, and where I've ended up, it always would be them, because I've watched them do what I'm talking about in a different way. But something my dad said from a very young age to me, there's always a way, Lauren, there's always a way. And honestly, I've been brainwashed with that. And I thank him for that, because honestly, when I'm overwhelmed as well, that's just playing in my head. That's just the story that I've been told as a little child, and I tell myself that now all the time. So I never, just don't give up on things that probably maybe I could or should, maybe sometimes. I don't know.
It's really interesting. I'm glad I kept going with that and uncovering it, because I think what's really important is we forget that we actually have influences. We have our own heroes in many ways. And for you, your dad's message resonates with you. I had never actually worked this out until just today. That's that underlying current of just, there's always a way. It's not never give up. It's there's always a way. Look for the solution. And, we always talk about every challenge being an opportunity. That's a growth mindset. Like no two bets aside. That's what it is. My gosh, I think we've covered every single question on here. But Lauren, one final question. If you could do anything else, right, professionally, what would it be?
I'd love to be an artist. I'd love to paint.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, I would.
Now, why don't you paint?
Sometimes I do. Not very well. I love creating, and I think that's what I do at the moment in a different way. So I think creativity is a big part of my...
Lift is your canvas.
Yeah, and creativity is not always, art. I think what I get to do every day taps into my need to create. But I think if, I was in a complete other world and didn't have to worry, about how I got wherever I was or what I was doing, I'd love to create lovely paintings.
I tell you, you've always been going on in my head. Do you want to have a go and think what I'm already thinking?
Nope.
Because this could be really bad, right? No, I actually have already started thinking to myself, the next conversation Lauren and I have is let's get a Lauren Whiting art studio going.
No.
On top of what we're doing. And actually, to be honest, I know a lot of successful business people who have a real passion for art. Those that buy art tend to buy it because they can't paint. That's me. Right now I'm lucky I've got Lucy who's an artist, so we can live with that. But I actually think that that's a way of being able to express what you want to achieve. And I actually think we should explore that. Not me, but I'm happy to push you to explore this. And I possibly could commission the first painting. Lauren, thank you so much for taking the time to be with me and us today. I hope that people have got an incredible amount of value from today's podcast. I certainly have, and I have the privilege of working with you every day, and I still learnt something new today. There's at least 4 things that I've taken to town on that I'll use in my writing. But thank you so much for being here, and I really appreciate you. Thank you.
Pleasure.
All right.